Our New Testament reading comes to us this morning from the 15th chapter of the book of Acts, beginning with the 4th verse. When Paul and Barnabas came to Jerusalem, they were welcomed by the church and the apostles and the elders. They declared all that God had done with the Gentiles. But some believers rose up and said, "It is necessary to charge them to keep the law of Moses." Now the apostles and the elders were gathered together to consider this matter. And after much debate, Peter rose and said to them, "You know that in the early days, God made the choice that all should hear the gospel and believe. We shall be saved through the grace of the Lord Jesus Christ, just as they will." And all the assembly kept silent. Then they listened to Barnabas and Paul as they related what signs and wonders God had done through them among the Gentiles. This is the word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God.
So this morning, it's already happened, but I'll tell you about it. It's called Transition Sunday. And every year when that happens, I get over here and I can't remember which transition it is. Is this like into kindergarten, 5th grade to 6th grade? That's what it actually is. We have people going all kinds of transitions right about now. The really tearjerker one, parents leaving a child at college. Oh my goodness. The gushing of emotion over that. I talked to a guy the other day. He'd made the transition to retirement. He's bored and is looking for a job already, flunking retirement. We're actually always making transitions day by day as we go through life. Somebody the other day describing somebody who was going to do something for us said, you know, he's young and he has a lot to learn. I raised my hand and said, I am old and I have a lot to learn. You always want to be that way. I think of the ultimate transition, right, is being able to embrace death itself. I was so lucky when I was a younger pastor. An older pastor befriended me, became like a mentor friend to me. His name is Reverend Claude Broach. He, for many years, was at St. John's Baptist Church here in Charlotte. He became my neighbor, and we spent a lot of time together. It meant so much to me, and he was dying. He died in 1997. I saw him just a few days before he died. I went to visit. His family was gathered there, and they were making small talk, as people do, of course. I got impatient with the small talk, and I said, Claude, we know you're near death. Tell me, how do you feel about dying? This is a great pastor and theologian, and you might expect him to say, I look forward to strolling through the pearly gates and walking the golden streets of heaven. That wouldn't have been Claude. Claude said, I'll never forget it, he said, when I think about dying, I am curious. I am curious. We always want to be curious. One transition after another, and once you make a transition, you can't go back, really. I guess the guy retiring, he can go back to work again. But on the whole, you can't go back. A few years back, some college buddies of mine and I decided to tailgate at a football game, and we had it going on. We were like college dudes again. We got there, we had a little tent, a little grill out there. Oh man, it was great. Felt like we were 18 again. It was great. But then I noticed our conversation drifted toward, well, my urologist says this, and my back doctor said this, and I said, guys, we're flunking tailgating. You can't go back. You can't go back. Acts chapter 15, which Tom read for us, a longer chapter. That's just part of it. It's really interesting. The early Christians, they didn't have a New Testament yet. They're figuring stuff out on the fly. What is Christian theology? What is it all about? Do you have to be Jewish? Is it for the Jews? Is it for Gentiles if they become Jewish? They don't have to. They were figuring all these things out. So they have a big conference, that's reported in Acts chapter 15, and they basically agree to have different strategies to reach different people. And that's always such a wise thing. It really, to me, explains what I think of as the beauty of denominations. Sometimes I get bugged that the church is divided, but it's probably a beautiful thing. One of the things I love about being United Methodist, by the way, is it is not in our DNA to get up in the morning and think we are right and those other guys are wrong. That's just not us. We get up in the morning and we celebrate the other varieties of Christianity, and it's good, isn't it? You have the Pentecostals, and they remind us that there's some movement and some emotion in this thing, and you have the Catholics and the Episcopalians who remind us there's an order, all this going on. It's great. The error that gets made is when we confuse cultural issues with what's really the gospel. Barbara Kingsolver's great novel, Poisonwood Bible, tells the story of Nathan Price. He's a pastor who lives in rural Georgia, and he hears God's call to go to the Congo to be a missionary. And he goes to the Congo, and he's vicious to the people in the Congo. He's supposed to be bringing the gospel, but he's vicious because he sees all these cultural trappings. They're just being Africans, but they don't look very Southern Georgia American to him, so he's condemning them for all these things that bug the daylights out of him. They don't bug God. It's sort of like Beverly Hillbillies, except it's not funny. Huge culture clash. He's trying to tear the culture out of these people. The deal in Acts 15 is they try to find a way to take the gospel to all people, to cross national boundaries, to cross cultural boundaries, to cross language barriers. That's always the beauty of Christianity. It didn't stay Middle Eastern, right? It's been all over the world. I'm part of a group right now that's planning a United Methodist conference for next year. And we're looking at our missional strategy to keep reaching the world. And it's so different. What we do in Kenya is different from what we do in Oregon, which is different from what we do in rural Georgia, which is different from what we do in Eastern Europe. We find ways. We adapt the gospel to the culture. I love the historian Mark Knoll said this: Christianity is by its nature a religion of nearly infinite flexibility because it has been revealed in a person of absolutely infinite love. I love that. Christianity can be infinitely flexible because it's all about a person of absolutely infinite love. There are always those, our religion is one of grace and mercy, and there are always those who want to add rules to the grace, and the impulse to add rules to the grace is not wrong. I was talking to a guy the other day. He was narrating his marriage. He's a newlywed. They're always a little clueless at that phase, but give it time. And he said to me, this was interesting. He said, "Our marriage is absolutely unconditional love." I said, "Dude, you better learn there's some conditions to marriage. There's some things you need to do and things she needs to do for this thing to work," right? That's what Dietrich Bonhoeffer taught us in The Cost of Discipleship. Germans then were saying, "Oh, it's the grace of God. We can do whatever we want." And Bonhoeffer said, that's cheap grace. That's cheap grace. It wasn't cheap for God, so it can't be cheap for us. There are conditions. You have to follow Jesus. There's stuff that God expects from us. The mistake that we make is we turn religion into a bunch of rules. And religion is not a bunch of rules. But then if we turn religion into a bunch of rules, we have a little more control, don't we? And then if we're saved, we really deserved that because we did the right things. We thought the right thoughts. We went to the right church. We did the right things. It's really earning salvation. It becomes entitlement. I've done this little experiment in my life. Sometimes I'm around wealthy people. And if you're around wealthy people, try it sometime. Try the word entitlement. And wealthy people will growl. They're very unhappy about entitlement. There are those entitlement programs that they do that thing. And I always respond to this. I try to be gentle, but it doesn't always work. I try to say the most entitled people I know are wealthy people. They're entitled to the best health care. They're entitled to the best food. They're entitled, right? It's like, I'm who I am. And it's entitlement. Entitlement is the antithesis of grace, whether you're rich or poor. It's the grace. It's the mercy of God. It's God's Unconditional love. And that grace elicits something. Like if you're really loved, right, it elicits something. God's grace is so magnanimous, so generous, so overflowing that it elicits in us service. It elicits in us a life of trying to be holy. It elicits in us a determination to do all that we can, the best that we can for God. I don't know if you noticed it when Tom read it. Peter says this phrase I hadn't thought about ever before. I should have. He says, in the early days, God made this choice. That's so interesting. In the early days, what early days? In the early days, God made this choice. What early days? It reminded me of something years ago. I wrote a book on the will of God. I was trying to deal with a lot of things people say, like, why did God cause this car accident for whatever? We have issues over God controlling everything. Excuse me. And in the book, I began it by introducing the idea of when God was young. Now, that's a tongue-in-cheek kind of thing. God was never young. God always has existed, so God can't have been young and then grown older. But if you think about way back in time, God's older now. So when God was young, if you will, God made a decision. And I've thought about the decision that God made when God made the world. And I wish I could go back in time and be there with God, because I would say, God, trust me on this. God, you're about to make a really bad decision. Because I know better than God, right? You may think you know better than God sometimes. And the bad decision that God made, God could have made everything where everybody would just be good. Everybody would just be kind. And we'd have no wars. We'd have no political parties. We'd have no tension. It would be great. And what was God thinking? Because you see, God said, well, I'll make them and I'll give them a lot of leeway down there. And did God have second thoughts? Because God, in making us free, God could have looked down the road and said, oh my gosh, there are going to be wars, and there's going to be abuse, and there's going to be racism, there's going to be terrible things. Did God have second thoughts? But God had to do what God did, because God could have made marionettes. We'd be marionettes, and we just do whatever God's bidding would be. But I think God would get bored with marionettes after a while. We'd get bored being marionettes after a while. God did not wish to be bored. More importantly, what God wanted, this was the risk, this was the craziness in the decision. God thought, I'll make some people, maybe they'll love me. Maybe they'll love me. Some won't, or some will do so poorly, but I really want them to love me, because God's a lover. And when you're a lover, you wish to be loved. So God made us just hoping we'd love God, hoping we'd love each other, knowing, fully anticipating that sometimes we'd love each other and sometimes we'd treat each other shabbily. Sometimes we'd love God and other times we'd just ignore God. God took that risk because God is love. And if you love, you can't help it, right? If couples come here to get married, they're so clueless, bless their hearts. They're great people. They're coming to get married. And I do the vows with them, and I know what they're thinking, right? I say, for better or worse, and they're thinking, better. I say, in sickness and in health, they're thinking, health. I'll say, for richer, for poorer, and I know they're thinking, oh, we hope richer. But it's for better or worse. If you could anticipate the heartache, would you still love? Part of me wants to say, yeah, you would, or maybe you'd back up. I don't know. I think you actually can't help yourself. When you love, you just love. You can't help it. You have to go forward. God could not help loving, because that's just who God was when God was young, who God has always been. God has always been love, and so God can't help loving. And the way that works when you love is such a risk. I remember when Lisa and I were dating, and I screwed up my courage and thought, this is the day I'm going to tell her I love you. I stacked the deck, right, to give myself a better odds of a good reply. I made I'm not a great cook, but I made like my best dinner. And I sat at the piano and serenaded her. That's pretty smooth. And I I was just my very best self. I was better than my best self. And then the time came, and I said, I love you. And when you do that, this is what I was doing. I thought about it. I reached inside my gut somewhere, and I pulled out this fragile crystal of myself, like that most precious part of me. And I held it out, and I handed it to her. And she had me. And once I'd said that, I was totally vulnerable, and she could have said, "Oh, you're nice." Or she could have said, "I like you, but I don't know." But instead, I got really lucky. She took that fragile crystal of myself, and instead of dropping it by saying, "Oh, you're nice," it would have shattered into 1,000 pieces, and it would have taken forever to glue all that back together again. Instead, I got lucky. She took me and held it close to her heart and said, "I love you." When God sent Jesus to earth, what God was doing is God was offering the fragile crystal, the wonder of God's heart to us, and it was totally vulnerable. God did not come down as a strong man saying, "You must obey me or else." No, God came down as just an infant. How vulnerable can you be? This little infant, God came down as Jesus, and he didn't hurt anybody, he didn't threaten anybody, and they took his pure, beautiful, holy body, and they beat the daylights out of him. Then they drove nails through his hands and his feet and pierced his side with a spear. And I just picture God in heaven looking down at all of that, and it just had to shatter God's heart. But God couldn't help that because God loved, and God wanted us to know that whatever you go through in your own shattering, in your own brokenness, in your own heartbreak, that God's in that with us. Every transition, whatever it is that we suffer, God's in that with us. That's the grace. God couldn't do otherwise. I'll close with this. On the other day, I sent out these text messages. Some of you get them. They're very hard for me because I'm long-winded, and those text messages have to be 160 characters, not letters, characters. And I'm like, oh, it's just an agony for me to get a short little quick message in. And the other day, I had a couple of meetings that canceled, so I had some time on my hands, and so I did what I've done a number of times. I sent out a message and just said, how can I pray with you? How can I pray with you? And somebody asked me, did you get any responses? Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. And some were kind of light things like, pray with me, I have a good day at work today. That's good. That's a good prayer. Most of them, though, I've got to be honest with you, were just, I was annihilated all day long. The people you go to church with, the people you pass in the store, the people in your neighborhood, they look okay, but they are not. They're dealing secretly with so much pain and worry and anxiety and woundedness. And how lovely that they would share with me. I mean, I'm honored, I'm humbled by that, and it reminds me how the hardest thing is that you have to bear that stuff alone or in secret. So we just live in a world where everybody wants to be doing good and being fine, but people are hurting, and the whole point of grace is I can share this. God already knows. God's mercy is already with you. That God is the one that sent his son who was shattered by the meanness of the world. Like, that's the God who is with us in all of that. Such a wonderful thing. God is with us. When I was a kid, I had a crush on a singer. I was 7 or 8 years old. Never got to meet her, doggone it. Her name is Petula Clark. If you're nodding, you're dating yourself. Petula Clark. She was great. And one of her best songs was called I Know a Place. I know a place where we can go. I know a place where you leave your worries behind. I know a place where the music is fine. I know a place, there are girls and boys all around. I know a place with an atmosphere all its own. Friends, I want to suggest to you that we know a place, and it's right here. Where else do you go that is like this place? I mean, this is a place where it's not about your productivity. It's not about how you look. It's not about pretending. It's a place of mercy. It's a place of hope. It's a place of grace. It's a place of love. It's a place where we don't just talk about God, we experience God. God comes down into this room and we breathe the very atmosphere of this place, and God comes into us, and we can barely wait till we can come back again next week. We need that so desperately. You know, a place of mercy, love, and hope. And we have that responsibility that those Christians felt in Acts chapter 15. Like, we got to spread this news. It's not just for us, it's for the world. And how do you spread that to the world? I mean, I don't know. You don't go lecture people for how bad they are and they better turn to God. Just the simplest thing. Maybe this week you can tell somebody, like, I know this place. It's my church, and I love it. I feel loved there. I feel God's presence there. And they may say, I already have a church. Fine, that's great. You can talk about church. Like, how cool is that? But maybe they're carrying one of those hurts that got texted to me the other day, and they need a place. They need some love. They need the grace. They need the mercy. When you're generous with the church, I always feel like I'm nagging you about money, but your generosity enables us just to be a place where there's an atmosphere of the presence of God. It's needed so desperately in our world. Friends, transitions, one after another. God's with us in them all. And we're with each other. God hoped we would love. We love God. We love each other. Love each other knowing that we have all the aches and the hurts and the fears and the pains. It's hard. It's joyful. It's a thing of beauty. For this we give thanks to God.